Welcome back to a new episode of the Shout at the Devils podcast. I'm your host, Justin Brady, and I run Devils Fanatics on Instagram. And I'm here with my co-host, Daniel Amoia. He runs devils.report on Instagram, and he writes for the Hockey Writers. Tom Fitzgerald did absolutely nothing to help this New Jersey Devils hockey team for the rest of the season. And a lot of people are calling for his head right now. A lot of people are calling for the firing of Fitzgerald. Daniel, give me the quick recap of the New Jersey Devils trade deadline acquisitions.
Well, I think it's factually incorrect to say he did nothing to help the team, but I can confidently say he definitely didn't do enough if they want to be considered contenders. I think it's pretty clear now that, I mean, he can say all he wants, like we believe in the guys in this room, which he has to say, let's be realistic, but they don't have a shot to make a run in the playoffs. I think I wrote yesterday I would liken it to Miracle on Ice V2 if this team won a Stanley Cup. Like that's how they look on paper. And look, I get it's unfortunate with Jack Hughes' injury, but that's just the reality of it. Other teams aren't feeling sorry when they're making trades with you. So first, the Devils initially traded for Brian Dumoulin, defensive depth. It seems like he's basically going to be the Jonas Siegenthaler replacement. The price was high. It was prospect Herman Troff and a second-round pick. But, I mean, I wouldn't say it's an overpay compared to other guys on the market. I think Carson Soucy got just a third, and I would consider Dumoulin better than him. That's just how the market is. It was a crazy market. I want to add that it's a weak draft this year, so second-round picks are more likened to like fourth-round picks in previous drafts. So that does make a big difference, but regardless, Devils filled the Siegenthaler hole, and that got everyone thinking, okay, like, they're clearly adding rentals here. Dumoulin is a rental. So maybe they're going to go all out. National reporters were reporting that the Devils were still all in and going to be buyers. And trade deadline day comes, still nothing. The clock ticks and ticks and ticks. It reached a point where I believe it was the longest the Devils have waited on deadline day to make a deal since 2019. The clock still continued to tick. And then New Jersey Devils make a trade. It was for Cody Glass. And look, this is no shade to Cody Glass, but Cody Glass is essentially, if you look at the numbers, is a slightly more offensive and probably faster Justin Dowling. And I would certainly consider him an upgrade over a lot of the guys in the bottom six right now, but he's not a needle mover. He's great in the face-off circle, known to be a great locker room guy. Basically everywhere he's went, they've loved him in the bottom six. But this team needs goal scoring. I think that was clear, or needed, I should say, because they really can't add past this point. And Cody Glass just doesn't bring enough of it if playoffs are your goal. So I think Glass is the best ad they've made so far, solely because you look at guys like Justin Dowling, like Curtis Lazar, even like Eric Halla with the way he's producing. Those players are not players on a contending team. And that's no shade to them. That's just how they performed. Cody Glass potentially can be a fourth line center on a contending team. He has the motor, as a former 6th overall pick with the Vegas Golden Knights. He's a very, very great defensively. So you don't want your fourth line to be a liability, right? If you have another strong 3 lines. And it's definitely not when Cody Glass is part of it. And he's a restricted free agent. I think he's only 24 years old. So he's someone who could be potentially part of the future. Think of basically what Curtis Lazar was last season, which was great, but even with a little more offensive potential than that. So that's what Cody Glass can be. I believe he scored a career high 35 or 36 points with Nashville 2 seasons ago. If you're getting, even if you could scratch out 25, 30 out of your fourth line center, and he's great defensively, he's probably going to finish as a plus, one of the better members on the team in terms of plus minus, and can handle other situations if needed. I know he's gotten top 6 minutes at times with teams. That's important. But then again, this is not to excuse anything, because in the context of this season, Cody Glass did not push the needle. And again, it seems like the Devils are kind of, they could say they want to contend this season all they want, but with the moves they made with Cody Glass, a fourth line center at best, on a contending team being the greatest acquisition or arguably greatest. I mean, it says it right there.
Yeah, it really does. And the other additions, they added Daniel Sprong, who was playing in the AHL prior to being traded to the Devils. Sprong had some offensive upside in the past. I believe he was a 20-goal scorer back in 2022-23 season. So some potential there. Maybe he has a chip on his shoulder, wants to be playing in the NHL. He made that clear. And then they made some kind of like nothing trades, AHL type of trades. Adam Beckman, they traded for, which I know a lot of Utica fans were upset about because he's a guy that has been there for quite a bit now and they've become a big fan of his. And yeah, just overall, I mean, just a whole lot of nothing, in my opinion, for what the Devils needed the most. Cody Glass, role player, I like it, can kill penalties, and the Devils' penalty kill has been pretty bad the last two to three games now. So that can help there, and that just goes to show that without Jack Hughes, the penalty kill has declined. Hughes has been one of their best penalty killers all season long. So look, I don't hate the Cody Glass trade, but I'm not like the biggest fan of it because it just didn't address the need that the Devils needed the most. And none of the trades that they really addressed the goal scoring. And you know what? For a second round pick, that's a pretty hefty price right there. The Devils are going to go out and make some moves. And it's so frustrating that you hear all the reporters saying the Devils are all in on trade deadline day. They're going to go get a center who could provide some secondary scoring. They're going to be looking into a top six piece for their team. And Fitzy just didn't deliver on based on all those reports. Were those reports 100% accurate? We don't know. Those are their sources. I don't know. I can't confirm whether or not those sources were true. I know Fitzy came up short on a player. It wasn't confirmed, but I have a gut feeling it was Dylan Cousins because it was apparently rumored that it was a center with tenure on his deal. So meaning that he had a couple more years on his deal after being traded. So that was a possibility. And 50 said the Devils came number two in trying to trade from. He ended up going to Ottawa Senators, and Dylan Cousins just had an amazing day for the Senators. Of course he did. It's frustrating. And Fitzy quoted, he said, "We probably could have added a couple other things, but this is the group that got us to this point. Let's let this group with a little help continue to take us over the goal line." I don't know. I don't get that quote at all, in my opinion. I don't want to be negative, but I feel like you can't say that this is the same team that got us to this point because you're without Jack Hughes. You're without your best offensive defenseman, Jonas Siegenthaler, for that season. You're without your best offensive defenseman, Dougie Hamilton, for an extended period of time. This is not the same hockey team anymore. And that was dead clear against the Winnipeg Jets last night. They, in that game, they probably played a good 5 minutes of hockey. And that was in the beginning of the third period. And then once they gave up that horrible goal, that horrible turnover by Nemec, they just took the foot off the gas and totally seemed like they gave up. They got destroyed and dismantled. And they had a really hard time creating offense for the majority of that game. And whenever they did get chances, there was a sequence where the puck was right at the goal line and Brad wasn't able to bury it. There was a sequence where Eric Holla had Hellebuck was like diving on the ice, and then you had a whole open net, and Holla just shot it right into him. It's just a lot of sequences where this team cannot finish, and that is not going to change now. Like these guys that they added, like all right, decent pieces, but as you said, Daniel, they're not needle movers for providing goal scoring that this team needed. And I don't want to say I lost hope, but like it's just not a team that looks like they're poised enough and determined enough to be able to make a run and possibly get into the playoffs. And we're saying this, and they currently have an 81% chance to get into the playoffs, according to Money Puck. And it just feels like it's all going downhill. I don't know if you saw the graphic, Daniel. The NHL posted a Stanley Cup to win the Stanley Cup odds. The Devils were around like plus 1,400 in the middle of the pack with all the other top teams up there. And once the Jack Hughes injury announcement came, dude, it went down, like significantly down, all the way to like plus 3,200. Like that's crazy. I just goes to show that without Jack Hughes, this team is just not as good as they were. And they didn't address that at the trade deadline. I know you don't want to go all out and sacrifice your future, but this is to my next point. I won't go too long, but Simone Nemec, geez, man, I want to root for the guy, but how can you do it? Because I I'm just using the eye test. He looks lazy out there and he looks effortless. He's making careless plays. That turnover, he wasn't even looking and he just, oh, let me just dump it back. And hopefully a devil's there right into the stick of a Winnipeg Jet breakaway goal. Like those plays cannot happen. You're in your third year of since being drafted, and those plays cannot happen. I know he's probably dealing with a lot of stress right now, especially based off the things that he said that got blown out of proportion back a few months ago. But even Christy Flannery, a Devils reporter, said that Nemich's former teammates think that he's not able to take accountability for his mistakes and really learn from them. And it's showing. Nemec had a -3 in that third period, let alone looked very lazy on several occasions that led to Winnipeg Jets goals. And I can't believe that he got sent down and Seamus Casey got sent down and he's staying with the team for now. I know he's going to be a seventh defenseman for them this upcoming game, but I cannot fathom that right now. Seamus Casey is the guy that can provide some goal scoring in a short sample from what we've seen, right? And Nemec has not shown that one bit at all. And I can't believe they didn't trade Nemec because now they're in a scenario now where they have 5 defensemen locked up until 2027 at least. And that doesn't even include Luke Hughes, who's going to get a hefty extension this upcoming offseason. So basically 6 defensemen right there that are locked up long term. Unless you move one of those guys, those are your 6 defensemen for the future. And now you have Nemec, Casey, and Dumoulin. Dumoulin's probably going to leave in the offseason, most likely, because Siegenthaler is going to come back. But then what do you do with Nemec and Casey? Because it's not fair to either of them to let them sit out or play in the AHL more when Casey has proven that he can hold his own and Nemec's value is still somewhat high. And I can't believe you don't try to make a deal for him and get someone like Jared McCann that could help this team long term, or a guy like Dylan Cousins. So I find that very frustrating. I think Nemec's value is just dropping game by game. And it's not going to help the Devils if they try to move him in the offseason when they possibly only get like a high first round pick at most. And that's going to suck considering that he was a number 2 overall pick. And then last thing I'm going to say, this is just a random thought. I put it out on Instagram a few days ago. It still hurts me that this team moved Howard to Foley last season. And I just don't get it looking back at it now. They didn't even get a first round pick from him. If they had gotten a first round pick from him, I would have changed my mind. I would have been like, all right, it's a good trade. The expiring free agent. And now you only got a second and third round pick for him when your guys like Dumoulin are worth a second round pick. And Toffoli, who was the Devils goal scoring leader last season, is only worth a second and a third. Like that's hard to fathom and think about right now. And if Toffoli had re-signed with the Devils, if they had kept him, I mean, Toffoli would have really helped this season, and he would really help right now because he's not a guy that relies on other players. He can create offense no matter who he's playing with. So look, that was just a random thought, and a lot of people agreed with what I said on social media. So it still annoys me that they moved to Foley. I get why, because he's an expiring free agent. The team was going downhill, but I don't know. I really wish they had kept him. I think he would have really helped this season if they were able to re-sign him. That's my piece right there. Fitzy, look, I'm not going to call for his job yet, but the seat's getting warm, and I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think with Toffoli that it's finishing has been the Devils' number 1 issue this season. If they finished at an average rate based on the chances they've created, they would potentially be going up against Winnipeg for the President's Trophy. I think it's like 28 or 29 goals below expected, and that's just based on what they're creating. That shows it right there. A lot of that goes to the bottom 6 who some people weren't happy with what I said on Twitter that the Devils are snake bitten. They're like, they're not snake bitten, they're just bad. I think the bottom 6 is both. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think, yeah, the bottom 6 hasn't pulled their weight at all and has, for the most part, consistently underperformed. But you look at some of these, I mean, you don't need a computer and a spreadsheet to figure out that these guys are snake bitten. I mean, like how many times wide open nets shoveled across the crease, or like goalies laying down and play right into his chest. I'm sorry, that's the definition of snake bitten. And that's what we've seen. You mentioned the game last night. You said the Devils basically got completely dominated. I'm going to disagree with that. I think that for a good majority of the game, a team that on paper is much less talented than Winnipeg, was able to skate with them. And Sheldon Keefe basically said it himself. Shimon Nemeth was the difference between a 6-1 game and a 3-1 game. I mean, -3, and you could argue all three of the goals were directly his fault. And that just can't happen. And look, Winnipeg's the best team in the league. They just played Dallas before that, one of the better teams in the league, and skated with them and had them tied with 15 seconds left. So I didn't look at that and be like, wow, like this team is just like so overmatched, like they are screwed. I don't view it that way. I viewed that as a Shimon Nemeth disaster class. And I really don't know what to make of it. I feel for the kid because things got taken out of context and all of a sudden he became like the devil for answering a question in his language, and it just got completely out of control. But with that being said, you have to back up your words on the ice regardless. If you say you believe you're an NHL player, you need to show that on the ice. And whether or not him getting bashed on social media had a part in that, I'm not sure. But I feel like people are starting to forget that last year as a 19-year-old defenseman, Shimon Nemeth was pretty good. I mean, you look at his underlying and regular numbers as someone just coming into the league, like he was pretty comparable with some other previous top defensemen in their first seasons at that type of age. This season just completely fallen off a cliff, and I don't know how much the injury he suffered in the Olympic qualifiers have to do with that, but it's just been bad. I mean, he's played, where's his ice time here? 16 games, 225 minutes. The Devils have allowed 55 high danger chances and only gotten 29 when he's on the ice. However, I do want to add, we need to have a talk about Seamus Casey because I still think Seamus Casey is far from being a regular NHLer. And the only reason, and I will take the heat for this, the only reason that he is viewed as someone so much better than Nemeth is because he happened to bury 3 or 4 goals. He's shooting at almost 50% right now. He shot 6% in Utica. It's not even close. If you look at the defensive numbers, Seamus Casey has been on par, if not worse, than Shimon Nemeth. I'll pull up the numbers here. So 83 scoring chances for 112 against when Nemeth is on the ice. For Casey, it's 44 chances for 62 against. So for Nemeth, the Devils have 42.5% of the scoring chances. For Casey, they have 41.5. So Casey's worse in that regard. On ice save percentage. When Seamus Casey's on the ice, Devils goalies have a .983 save percentage. On top of him shooting almost 50%. None of that is even remotely close to sustainable. I don't disagree with them sending Seamus Casey down, keeping Shimon Nemeth up. Defensively, like, Casey's a liability to me. Great offensive player. He has the potential. I'm not saying he's bad in any sense. But Keefe said it last night. This is not the place to learn in the NHL when you're in a playoff race. Like, they can't afford these rookie mistakes. And that's why, according to Amanda Stein, Dennis Cholowski is going to play in Shimon Nemeth's spot in Philly. You send Casey down, he can continue to work on that game because he has that potential, and he's getting games rather than just sitting in the press box like Shimon Nemeth likely will. And I don't think that's a bad thing for Casey. I don't think that's a punishment in any sense, like some are making it out to be. So, look, I know I'm going to get heat for that, but I don't care because I'm just looking at the numbers and the eye test as well. I've seen goalies make tremendous saves when Casey has been out of position or not physical enough to keep up with NHL play. And none of this means Shimon Nemeth has been great because he's been terrible. There's no sugarcoating that. But neither of them right now are in a place to be consistent NHLers, and that's why neither of them are in the lineup or at least will be in the lineup against Philly when we're heading into these games. All I want to say is that they're both a work in progress. They both have potential. I see people already like get rid of Nemeth, and look, I think they need to because of where their defense is, but I still think he has tremendous value. I think I saw it reported that Nemitz was part of the big asset that the Devils came in second place on, and the Devils didn't want to give him up. So that just shows that he has that level of value. You look at what David Jiricek got, which I think was like 2 first-round picks and a prospect or something like that. Nemitz is in a very similar situation. I mean, this is a guy who was dominating against men at the World Championships when he was 17 years old, playing against NHLers. I mean, you don't just forget how to play hockey. He just looks, I don't know if it's a work ethic thing. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I can't truly say, but he just doesn't look like he belongs right now. And it has not been pretty. And the Devils can't afford those mistakes anymore. And I think Keefe is showing that by the Devils going out and getting essentially almost a career AHL or at least a split guy, NHL, AHL guy, and Dennis Cholowski, because the Devils at the end of the day are still in a playoff race. And they can't afford to have Nemitz keep making those mistakes. And I think Keefe's exact phrase was, that player we watched there tonight should be in a different league. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pretty wild statement, but I mean, you can't argue with it when you watch the game. So it has not been pretty. Daniel Sprong, I actually think could be a good ad, could be a horrendous ad. This is a guy who do I have the numbers here? I know I do.
Well,
This
while you're finding that, I will say he was only worth a 2026 seventh round pick. So look, you're not giving up much in that regard. So you know what? Low risk, high reward type of player right there. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't mind the trade at all. That was the only trade that I was like, know what? I get it. I understand this. And I can see how this could be beneficial towards the Devils. And not to say Cody Glass wasn't, but like, it's just the value for a third round pick is just a little too much for me, in my opinion. But go
I
ahead.
mean, that's how the market was. But anyway, Daniel Sprong, 43 points in 76 games last season. The huge calling card with him, which Keith referenced yesterday post game, is that Daniel Sprong essentially doesn't play defense. He has refused to his entire career. He plays extremely sheltered minutes. He averages 11.57 per game over 9 years in the NHL. So he's basically forced into the bottom six. But regardless, when he's on the ice, he produces, and you just got to pray that he's scoring more goals than the team's given up. Now, the Devils have a lot of defensive pieces in place. You look at guys like Lazar, like Cody Glass, Justin Dowling, for as unproductive as they've been offensively, they're all pretty great defensively. I mean, the Devils, if you look at goals allowed per game, are one of the best teams in the league in that regard. So I guess the hope is the rest of the defensive players are completely shutting it down, and the top guys are going, and Daniel Sprong's on his own is adding that depth scoring, which is a lot to ask of someone who is currently playing in the AHL, but he has the potential. This is a crazy stat that I don't think enough people have seen. I'm going to name you the top 6 players in 5-on-5 scoring in the last 2 seasons before this season. So that was 22-23 and 23-24. Number 1, Nathan McKinnon, 2.7 points per 60. Number 2, Austin Matthews. Number 3, David Pastrnak. Number 4, Connor McDavid. Number 5, Daniel Sprong. Daniel Sprong, 2.26 points per 60 at even strength in the 2 seasons before this one. But if you play no defense, it really doesn't matter. He's known to cheat for offense, but at the end of the day, it's something this Devils team needs. And maybe, just maybe, it doesn't hurt again for a 7th round pick. It's just some weird combination where the defensive guys all make up for his own defensive woes, and Daniel Sprong is just taking on a boatload of the scoring. Like the numbers say, he technically can. I mean, that's better than guys like Sidney Crosby, Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, better than Jesper Bratt, better than Nico Hischier, better than Sebastian Aho. I mean, those are some big, and I'm not here saying Daniel Sprong's better than Jesper Bratt. No, that's not at all what I'm saying, but he has produced at even strength before, and that's what this team needs the most. The power play is mostly set. Any power play is going to be up and down, but even strength scoring has been beyond non-existent. I think the Devils are 30th or 31st in the league in even strength scoring since January 1st. And with Jack Hughes out, that's only going to go down even more, as if that was even possible. So Daniel Sprong is Fitzgerald said himself yesterday when I asked him, very low risk, high reward. And we're going to see how that goes. It's almost like a Moneyball approach if you've seen that movie. At this point, they basically mailed in on the season. This is a last ditch resort, but I think we can both agree getting to the playoffs on its own is still a very important thing just for experience. And who knows? I mean, maybe they could even somehow just go on a complete luck heater and win a round and give fans something to cheer about. But they got to get there first. And it would be very big for experience for the fan base, who is obviously and somewhat reasonably frustrated right now. And I think just to like, it would be embarrassing if the Devils didn't make the playoffs from where they were at Christmas. I mean, I think they were second or third best team in the league. Just to have that kind of collapse, that's not, regardless of circumstance, that's just not a good look as an organization. I think Fitzgerald almost seemed a little defeated yesterday. He admitted there was his own disappointment. When I asked him, he said he doesn't think the players share in that disappointment, but I mean, they're human beings at the end of the day. If you're a guy like Nico Hischier or Jesper Bratt, I personally can't imagine a world where you're not upset or a little frustrated that you haven't gotten help all year, really. And now your team's best player goes down and you don't really get any offensive help. So it's going to be very interesting to see how these games unfold. The Devils have a fairly favorable schedule. We've said that before and it hasn't gone well, but on paper, it would still, even at this point, be a pretty considerable collapse if they didn't make the playoffs. They're going to have some key games, two against the Blue Jackets, one home, one away, and one against the Rangers at the Rock. Those are going to be huge games because at the end of the day, regardless of what the other wildcard teams are doing, if the Devils stay in front of the Blue Jackets and the Rangers, they're in the playoffs in a divisional spot. So they need to start racking up wins, though. They need to give themselves some extra cushion. They're definitely capable of doing it. They have a defense and goaltending that can stifle the opposition on any given night. They just need anyone on the team to take a step, whether that's Timo Meier going on a March Madness run, whether that's Stefan Nason or Paul Cotter playing like they did in October, whether that's Nico Hischier playing like he did October, November, December. But they need multiple people to go on a heater to make up for what what they're missing from Jack Hughes, and then it'll go from there.
Yeah, a lot of guys are going to have to step up, and it's not going to be easy. But as you said, favorable stretch, next 5 games at Philly, winnable game. At home against Columbus, winnable game. Home against Edmonton. Edmonton's been struggling as of late. Winnable game. At Pittsburgh, they own Pittsburgh. So, based off past history, they should win that game. And then at Columbus, winnable game. And then just really every game after that is very winnable, except for maybe like their road trip against the Jets, or their 2-game road trip or 3-game road trip, I should say. And the Jets, they put the Jets in the Wild in that road trip. So those are definitely 2 games, really difficult to win those on a back to back as well. But no excuses, right? No excuses anymore. Yes, you lose players. It sucks. It really does. But considering where this team was back in December and really ever since that Christmas break, it's like no excuse not to make the playoffs anymore. You got to toughen out. You got to find a way. Everyone's going to have to chip in at some point. People are going to have to step up. And if they don't make the playoffs, it's a very disappointing season. And, and a lot of fans will be irate. Fitzy's job will definitely be heating up regarding the hot seat wise. And you can even call out the ownership at some point soon here if nothing's changing, because now we're at a point where it's been nearly 2 decades of Devils hockey where they have not been able to make the playoffs in back-to-back years. And that's really concerning as a franchise. Most franchises in the NHL, if you're not the Buffalo Sabres, have been able to do that. And the fact that the Devils are inconsistent from season to season, and even right now, ever since the Christmas break, I think they've only won back-to-back games, maybe once or twice. It's just been a win, lose, win, lose, 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 win, lose. Like it's been like that type of hockey. The Devils are 9-14-3 in their last 26 games. A lot of inconsistent, a lot of lazy, a lot of bad hockey overall. And at some point, I know we've said this all season long, a win streak is needed, at least of 3 games to get this team going, get themselves some separation. in the standings. Something's going to have to happen. Some guys, oh, my alarm just went off. Bad luck there. And it was the Devils' goal horn. So maybe that's a sign that the Devils will be scoring some goals a lot more as of late. I don't know. But yeah, really hope something changes and get it going, man. Can't let this losing streak drag anymore. They're on a 3-game losing streak, and they've had a tough time the past few years winning games in Philadelphia because Philly has always stifled them defensively whenever they play them. So that's definitely not a good sign for this Devils team, considering that they've had a hard time scoring, but they somehow squeeze out a 2-1 win. We'll be happy with that. Any win, I'll be happy with. Doesn't matter how. It's just squeaking out these wins. And yeah, let's see what happens. I'm still excited for this team. In the last 18 games or so, I believe they can go on a run. I'm not like the most confident now that they don't have the most stacked roster on paper. It looks pretty depleted when you look at the bottom 9 forwards there. And yeah, it's going to be tough, but let's see what this team's made of and let's see what the top guys are made of, right? Team Amoia, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt. I want to see what those guys are made of. I want to see them step up in the absence of Jack Hughes. And past history, whenever Jack Hughes is out of the lineup, this team struggles. I want to see the opposite. I want to see this team come out in Philly, score the first goal. Whenever they do score the first goal, they're basically a lock to win that game. I think it's like over the past 12 games, whenever they do score the first goal, they're 5-0. In those games, whenever they don't score the first goal, they're 0-7. So scoring the first goal, we brought it up a lot last season. That's a start right there. Get off to a good start, and that could really dictate how the rest of the game goes. Let's see what happens. I'm looking forward to it. Hoping this team can find a way to make the playoffs. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, I mean, you said it to me last episode, so I'm going to tell you to pump the brakes a little bit. This team, I think, from the top down, has shown that they are different than the Devils of, say, 2018-19 or 2015-16. They are locking up guys. They have a core. And the bottom line is they were one of the better teams in hockey 2 seasons ago. Then these last 2 seasons, not saying there haven't been issues, but injuries have been crazy. I mean, they were lucky for most of this season. And I said, like, I mean, knock on wood, but they've been pretty good. And then literally 3 of their top 5 players instantly go down. So at the most important time as well. So they have players in place. They're locking up players. It's not like they're. I saw a screenshot of a roster the other night. I'm trying to remember whose name it was. That was Yegor Yakovlev was on the first line as a forward. It was like Yakovlev, Rooney, and Agostino. Maybe I don't remember, but as a top
Nick
line,
Lappin, maybe. Maybe like Nick Lappin was
it
on the
was Nick
first line.
Lappin. Yes, it was Nick Lappin.
Yeah.
As a top line. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this team still has Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, Timo Meier healthy. Aside from that, there's not much offense. But I mean, Dawson Mercer did have a good game. But regardless, players are locked up. They have Jack Hughes. He's just not available right now, but he's still part of the team. This team should, unless Tom Fitzgerald botches something miserably at the trade deadline, it seems clear that they're going to have to fix the depth scoring, just like they needed goaltending, and Fitzgerald went ahead and did that, and it's been great. I don't see this team not making the playoffs for the next few seasons. I just don't see how that happens, but got to focus on this season first. We'll see how it goes. The next few games are going to be very important for the Devils.
Let's do it, man. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see what happens.
So thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. As always, looking forward to hearing your feedback. Stay tuned to all our socials, Daniel_Amoia on X, devils.report on Instagram, Devils Fanatics on Instagram and Twitter. These next few games are going to be really showing about this Devils team. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Peace.